Good morning and welcome back. You're watching World Talks here on TVP World, and we're going to discuss the latest on the American political scene. Vice President Kamala Harris rolled out her running mate on Tuesday, and it seems that Democrats got a second chance in their race against Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. On another note, 50 years ago, on August 8, 1974, Richard Nixon has resigned following the Watergate scandal. To discuss the lessons of the past and the future of American politics, I am joined here this morning by Alberto Coll, professor at DePaul University College of Law. Good morning, sir. Delighted to have you with us. So let me ask you about what Watergate changed. I mean, can we see change in American politics following Watergate over the last 50 years?
The changes in American politics over the last 50 years since Watergate have been vast, and they have mostly not been for the better. You know, back in 1974, when Richard Nixon was impeached, he probably could have chosen to fight out the whole movement to push him out of office. But he deliberately chose not to, because he thought it would put the country through a very grave political and constitutional crisis. So even though Nixon has been maligned and demonized by his enemies over the past half century, in retrospect, he was a great American president. Obviously, his main mistake in the Watergate crisis was that after a number of minor Republican operatives bugged, they wiretapped the Democratic National Party headquarters in Washington, D.C., and this came to light that he took steps to try to shut down that investigation. It was a major mistake of judgment on his part, but it really obscured tragically what was a great career as president. Richard Nixon was reelected in 1972 with the largest electoral margin that no American president has been able to match since 1984, when Ronald Reagan beat Walter Mondale. Moreover, he was probably the last really thoughtful American president on foreign affairs. Nixon thought deeply and very thoughtfully about the United States' role in the world and how the United States should combine its strength with active diplomacy. And that's something that American presidents have had difficulty doing, let's say, over the past 10 years. And most recently, the current administration does not really how to blend American strength and deploy it together with diplomacy. And Nixon understood that to have diplomacy, you need to have it backed up by hard military power and your adversary's recognition that you are willing to use it. Very thoughtful president, started the trend towards a rapprochement with China. He also understood that the United States' main rival, the Soviet Union, we could not change them, and we had to talk with them. So even as we competed with them, we had to have active diplomacy and conversations with them. And that's where the policy of détente came from. The idea that even as we were rivals with the Soviets, we would talk with them in order to lower tensions, in order to reduce the possibility of a catastrophic nuclear accident. So all across the board, Nixon was an outstanding American president. It was very tragic that he really mistook the importance of what he was doing in terms of trying to suppress the investigation, and what was a very minor burglary and something he really did not need to do. Nixon was on course to win this large electoral landslide, and certainly he should have, if he had known about it ahead of time, I think he would have put an end to this crazy idea to wiretap the Democratic Party headquarters in Washington.
Right. Professor, you said that the American politics did take a turn, however, not for the better, and we can see the current presidential campaign in full swing. Already some harsh rhetoric is there. What else can we expect, and perhaps should there be some checks and balances introduced to sort of curb that?
One of the things that has happened in the system is, Nixon was capable. If you look at his speeches, they were very thoughtful speeches, and even in his campaign, his speeches were thoughtful. He dealt with issues. He presented issues. If you look at the current campaign, between Trump and Kamala Harris. Number one, Trump engages in a lot of name calling. He has had difficulty laying out serious substantive policy positions. But on the other hand, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are doing pretty much the same. They're simply sticking to the line that Trump is a grave danger to the republic, that Trump is a threat to democracy. But Harris and Walz are not saying a single thing about substantive policy positions that they would take. And so American political campaigns have become very devoid of substance, and they have lost that serious edge, that serious sense. Harris has been engaged over the past 2 weeks in this very gauzy effort to come across as Miss Cool. And Trump always tries to come across as a tough guy. But, Nixon would have been very ill at ease with this kind of style. He was a serious candidate. He was a serious politician who projected an image of seriousness. And the idea of Nixon trying to be cool would have been laughable to people in the 60s or 70s. People back then were not attracted to candidates who just projected image. They expected substance. And we see in these two current candidates, neither of them is projecting much substance. A lot is about image. It's about dancing. It's about looking cool and popular. And that just is a symbol of the deterioration of the American political system over the past half century.
Right. However, I think that at times they are trying to speak about concrete issues. Let's take a listen to what Tim Walz said about Donald Trump recently. We'll have a soundbite here, a sample of the rhetoric that's being used.
If Trump returns, he's going to learn something from the last time. He didn't get the job done. This time, it will be far, far worse, and he will get the job done and make sure that we can't organize collectively to improve our lives. That's what it's coming. So whether he cuts the middle class, makes it more difficult to own a home, whether he repeals the Affordable Care Act so you can't get health insurance, are the things that they talk about, gutting Social Security and Medicare.
So what are some of the key issues that could be winning points to either side during this election?
Well, I think for the Democrats, there are a number of winning issues. For example, they have been playing very heavily the issue of abortion. The idea that the Democratic Party is a much better protector of the right to abortion. And this is something that resonates with many American voters, particularly many American women. So for them, they have figured out that's a winning issue. And then beyond that, they have a series of policy proposals, all of them unaffordable, regarding, widening the scope of Medicare for all, the idea that Medicare, which now every American 65 or older enjoys, would be available to everyone in the country. They have ideas about making, for example, financing parental leave. This could be a very popular issue, except again, it's unaffordable. And on the issue of Trump, I think the Republicans have a very set of strong issues that they could deploy that they have not been deploying, which is just look at the record of the Biden administration. Look at their record on foreign policy, for example. President Biden withdrew disastrously from Afghanistan 3 years ago, and it has come back to us because it destroyed American credibility. President Biden failed to deter Vladimir Putin from invading Ukraine. I think a different president, I think Richard Nixon, might have been more effective in reminding Russia about very high costs that they would incur, not just economically, as Biden did, but also militarily if Russia invaded Ukraine. And finally, with regards to the Middle East, the American policy under President Biden of appeasing Iran, of softening the oil sanctions on Iran, has emboldened Iran and its allies and certainly played a hand in the calculus to carry out this massive attack on October 7th, which in turn has plunged the Middle East into war. So the administration's foreign policy record has a lot of questions to answer for, as has also their handling of the economy, which triggered the massive wave of inflation. American workers' real wages are stagnant. They have not increased under this president over the past 4 years. Real wages, that is, wages measured by inflation. And those are issues that the Republicans should be hitting the Democrats on, but they have not been doing that, of course, with any kind of effectiveness or highlights.
Right, sir. So can we see sort of perhaps a demographic difference in support for Donald Trump and Kamala Harris? Harris was recently called brat by a popular musician. Do you think that she will get the votes of Gen Z?
Yeah, again, this is image. This is a lot of, Kamala is cool. She's young. The Democrats are definitely going to play on that. And they're going to get a large share of the younger vote. Though I think it's important to realize this is something very disturbing that's happening in the United States, which is that even the younger vote is breaking up along gender lines. You see many more younger men now turning to the Republican Party, and of course, many younger women turning to the Democratic Party. Older voters may be tempted to vote for Trump. But, you also have some very harsh rhetoric from Trump. Trump projects an image that does not sit well with many voters in swing states, voters in the center who haven't really decided who to back yet. And I think that Trump would have done much better picking a much more seasoned vice presidential candidate than J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance may be a very smart young man, but he's 39 years old. And he does not project the kind of seriousness that I think Trump would have been better served as having a vice presidential candidate, somebody like Glenn Youngkin, a very successful governor of purple Virginia, or some of the others. I mean, Nikki Haley would have been an outstanding vice presidential candidate, and he would have really canceled the Democratic claim that the Democratic Party is the party of women and that the Republican Party is really led by a bunch of old men. That's one of their lines. And of course, Nikki Haley would have destroyed that line. But again, the Republican Party missed that chance. Trump missed that chance because of his personal resentments against Nikki Haley. So right now, I think in terms of image, the Democratic Party has the edge, as you pointed out very rightly. They have this perception of youth. They represent the generation of the future. And across the aisle, there is Donald Trump, who's 78 years old. And certainly the Democrats are going to capitalize on that advantage. And I think they will probably carry a big portion of the Gen Z vote.
So I guess we'll have to wait and see who's got a better strategy. Professor Alberto Coll, thank you, sir, for being with us this morning. Much appreciated.
Absolutely. Delighted.
And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here.